let's just dive in. Zach was accepted onto the show. He was told 3.5 weeks before departure to Argentina that you're going to go camp in Argentina for could be a while. And you have 3.5 weeks to prep. Zach, you had 10 items to bring with you. How did you pick those 10 items? And I have to ask this part because Lisa wants this part asked. What is the 11th thing that you would have brought that you didn't bring?
Well, I found out, 3 weeks. I mean, we went to a boot camp, and it was like we had 3 weeks to get ready. And that's not a lot of time to pick out the stuff that you're going to live with, possibly for a year is what I thought, it might take. And so in the end, I got them all here this is my wizard staff I called. And if you've seen the show, you've seen it. It's my whole story of my time there. And it starts at the top with the fish head. We'll get to that later. And then my 10 items. So I had the slingshot. I chose that because I watched all these survival shows, and I thought the slingshot instead of a bow might actually bring something home a little bit at a time. The fishing line and hooks. The shovel, so I could dig grubs and worms, and as well as it was a sharpened shovel, so I could use that for cutting down trees and making small things for my shelter. And paracord, pot with a pan lid, a really cheap Coleman sleeping bag because I had already spent all my money on nicer, warmer clothes, and
They made you pay for your own stuff?
Yeah, oh yeah,
Wow.
yeah. You have to pay for all your own stuff,
Okay.
and it had to be top secret. So it's like I can't go around and be like, "Hey, LL Bean, I'm going on this show. I'm going to be super famous someday. You want to hook me up with some duds, and so you got to be quiet about it. So that it's all up to you, But my family, secretively, not knowing, not really, but hooked me up, lent me some money so I could get some nice stuff. And so I got the ferro rod, which is a fire starter, multi-tool, which is already that's 3 things that other people would never have chose. Nobody's ever chose a multi-tool, a shovel, or a slingshot for a show like this. And so that was talked about a whole lot before the show. And then the axe and the saw. And I got the last of my items the day before we left. And the day before that, it was from Amazon, and it was my boots, and they were the wrong boots. And they didn't have any liners in them. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I just spent $250 on a pair of boots, and it didn't even come with a liner. And so I sent them a message, and they're like, we'll get it there tomorrow, I promise, Sure enough, it showed up, and they were the worst boots I ever. Just in case you ever buy Sorel's Adventure boots, they were
Off Amazon.
They weigh a ton, and
they're not a sponsor of ours.
No, so. Yeah. Thank goodness, man. There goes my brand deal.
Well, and to that end, you were catching fish, like you say, almost every day. But I love this detail. I asked you, tell people how many raw fish that you ate while you were down there.
Raw?
Yeah.
None.
Right.
None, yeah.
Because what would you do with it?
Oh, every day I'd catch a fish, and it didn't matter how hungry I was, because there was some days I'd have to go 2 days without a fish, and I had the fish heads, and I would smoke them, so that they were ready and they were preserved. So every day, that's why the fish head's on top. I'd have fish head soup 3 times a day. Boil it, mash it, stick it in a stew, drink it down 3 times a day, so I get the electrolytes and the nutrients from all the bones. But the rest of the fish I would take and I'd set it out of the fire. It didn't matter how hungry I was, 4 to 6 hours. I'd joke to the camera, I'd be like, on Iron Chef today, we were gonna smoke our fish for 6 hours. And then we get the hot coals and we rake them out and we pan sear it on both sides till it comes to a delicious crisp flavor. And they were the best fish. Every meal was the best meal I ever had, because they were like these pink trout that was like the duck trap salmon here. And they just melt in your mouth. They were so good. It's
funny too, because you watch the other contestants on the show and they're literally eating raw fish at pretty early stage. They just didn't care. But as a true Mainer, you wanted the herbs and 6 to 8 hours of smoking.
It was all about the creature comforts of home.
Yeah.
It was
How similar was it to Maine in that there were mountains, there was ocean, the temperature looked something like we would be familiar with?
It was very similar, because it was weird, because they fly us over those glaciers, and I had never seen a glacier before in my life. I've seen snowfields up at Killington, but this was like giant chunks of ice on the tops of these mountains that are crumbling and just crazy, and they bring us into this lake way up on top of the mountain, and then they bring us into this forest that's like a rainforest with bamboo and 200-foot tall trees. But then the climate was like Maine 2 years ago, where it was the first month it would rain in the mornings, and then it would be misty, and then it would be nicer and kind of semi-muggy in the afternoon. The middle month was frozen the whole time, and the last month it would snow and then rain off. So it was like, it was very similar to Maine, like by Camden Shore, you know, like.
Yeah, nothing you hadn't,
Yeah,
nothing.
it was.
You weren't
Made it feel like
prepared for.
home a little bit.
Yeah.
You know.
So let's talk about the tools a little bit here, because I want people to get a chance to see some of them. And what I think is the coolest one, why don't you talk about that axe?
shovel?
I call it the axe shovel.
The axe shovel?
Yeah.
This is the Spetsnaz cold steel shovel.
A Russian shovel.
It's a Russian, yeah. Their special forces had come up with this in like World War I, and it was sharpened on all edges, so it allowed them to fight, and it also allowed them to dig trenches. And nobody's ever picked something like this for a survival show. And in fact, that was one other big thing when I'm watching the show. I'm watching all these people going on Reddit, you know, and just like, oh man, what an idiot! He wasted a tool, and like, what would you use a shovel for? You know, like, oh, he's got to dig a latrine. You know, it's so ridiculous. You know, it's like you're gonna waste all these calories. In the end, I used it to dig 150 steps to get over this hillside, 8 stories up, to build my shelter there, because I didn't want to just fall off the hillside when it was icy and snowy. And I dug every day a little bit, doing odds and ends, and I'd be able to get all the worms, and I could bait all my hooks, which meant that I caught more than twice as many fish as everybody else that went out there. So I came out a lot stronger than I went in. And it was just a great tool. I could use it to cut the bamboo.
Well, and I don't know if people in front row can probably see it, but I can see the edge from here. That sucker's sharp, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Wait, you?
Oh, and it was it was kind of my entertainment.
Your signature move.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So there's this tree there's a big dead tree in front of my shelter, and I made a little circle with an X in the middle, and I pretended I was like, how famous could I be after? Can I get in Walking Dead after this? So it was like, so I pretend like I'm saving Rick and those guys in Walking Dead, and I'd like dodge around, zombie, and then throw it at the tree and get it to stick in. And so by the time I left, I could pretty much stick that, right in the center every time from almost any distance. You know, it was.
And they love showing it over and over
Yeah,
again, too.
see, it just randomly, if the show's about to end and I hadn't even been on that one episode, and all of a sudden, thunk, and you hear me. And the funny part is when we viewed the show at Thresher's Brewery, and we're sitting there, and it goes thunk, and it sticks in the tree, and I laughed in stereo with my own same laugh on the show, and everybody was like, thought it was so funny, you know.